Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth event in our new series of Bristol24 Presents, where we are focusing on diversity in Bristol's boardrooms and workforce. My name is Sophia, and I'm the editorial assistant at Bristol24. So, to give you an idea of what's coming up over the next hour and a half, we'll start by sharing a video from our sponsors, TLT. I'll then introduce our amazing panelists, and then we'll go straight into our discussion where there'll be the opportunity for you to send in questions via our chat box to our guests around the subject at hand. First up, let's have our sponsor video from TLT.
Hello, my name's Esther Smith and I'm a partner and Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Champion at law firm TLT. Whilst TLT is a national organisation, our roots and our headquarters are very strongly embedded here in Bristol. Inclusion is at the core of our strategy at TLT, and we're committed to delivering the best possible working environment for all our people and attracting talent from all areas of society. We really want to drive and deliver sustainable and meaningful change. We've worked really hard over recent times at TLT to create a working environment where our people genuinely feel able to bring their whole selves to work, to be comfortable and secure in their place of work, to feel valued and respected, and to have a voice and to contribute to our continued success. But equally as important is looking very carefully how we attract and recruit our talent into the business and challenging ourselves constantly to do better, to reflect within our own business the diversity of the communities where we are based and the clients we serve. Targets can be quite a contentious subject, but we recognise how helpful they can be in focusing our efforts to achieve a particular goal and to measure our own progress in meeting that goal. We've committed to targets to improve female senior-led representation, and we're working towards a 33% female partnership level by 2025. We've also created a senior-led internal targets task force here at TLT, and the purpose of this is to ensure that our activity works towards meeting our goals and to work towards setting ourselves meaningful targets in other areas of diversity. We want to ensure that we continually challenge our thinking and our actions. And for us, this is not just about saying the right thing, but holding ourselves to account for doing the right thing and then measuring the results of those actions. As a firm headquartered in Bristol, we really want to work with the communities we operate in and in partnership with like-minded businesses. And this is why we sponsored this event. And it's a great opportunity to explore how these collaborations and partnerships can help address the challenges that we're all facing. A vital part of any diversity and inclusion agenda is diversity of thought. And by collaborating, we can all learn from each other and share some fantastic ideas. Initiatives such as Better Business play a key role in providing the opportunity for collaboration and sharing best practice. And it's through working together and actively working to improve diversity and inclusion in the workplace that we will start to break down barriers and inspire some real change.
Thank you very much to TLT for sponsoring today's event. So there is a glaring lack of diversity in boardrooms across Bristol and the rest of the UK. For example, data from Company Matters highlights that 96% of directors of firms listed on the AIM and 95% of the FTSE 100 are white. When it comes to gender, the numbers aren't much better. Of the FTSE 100, only 8% of CEOs are women. This isn't just disappointing, but also has negative impacts on businesses and organisations. So far, the targets to improve are voluntary, and this means we're seeing really slow progress, and leadership across the city remains to be held by a really narrow demographic. With more and more programmes that are aiming to support businesses and organisations to improve the diversity of their governing bodies and boards, there is, however, some room for optimism. Again, if you have questions that you'd like to put forward to a panelist today, then you can enter them into the chat box below and I'll raise them towards the end of the discussion. I'd also like to apologise for the lack of subtitles for this live event, but we will be uploading a full recording of the event with captions, and that will be available on our YouTube and website later this afternoon. Now it's time to welcome our four amazing panellists onto the screen, as long as there are no technical hitches. Perfect. Hello everyone, it's lovely to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining. So I'm going to give a little introduction to everyone. So first up, we have Kalpna Wolf. Kopner is the CEO of Be On Board, which is the organisation that aims to support businesses and organisations to improve the diversity of their governing bodies and boards by connecting a diverse range of board-ready executives and matching them with businesses. Just to note that Kopner will have to leave the call at 2:50 today, but that's plenty of time. Next up, we have Sam Sherlock. Hello, Sam. With over 10 years of experience in the disability sector, Sam provides support to individuals and organisations via employment and training programmes with charity Leonard Cheshire that ultimately aims to close the disability employment gap. Up next, we have Esther Smith. Hello, Esther. Esther is an employment lawyer at TLT and also actively engaged in driving change across the firm through her senior level influence. Since her time as Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Champion at the firm, Esther has overseen the appointment of 4 senior leaders for race and LGBT+ inclusion. And last but definitely not least, we have Clayton Planter. Clayton is the founder and CEO of Street Boardroom, which is the organisation that opens up opportunities for people from disadvantaged backgrounds who are being failed by a system that doesn't allow them to reach their full potential. Today, the focus of our event is around Bristol's progress towards becoming a leader in diversity with a focus on our boardrooms. It's really exciting that we've got experts here today to learn more about how governments, companies and individuals are working hard to bring about lasting positive change. Another reminder that if you have any questions, please do ask them in the chat box and I'll get to them later. So my first question to all of our panelists, so we can get a better understanding of the context of your background and expertise, is where is Bristol currently in terms of diversity in workforces and boardrooms? Esther, do you want to go first?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining the event today. It's really great to be taking part in this. We all know and love the fact that Bristol is a fantastically diverse city in terms of its population. And, you know, it is just an absolute thing to be celebrated in the city we live in. However, I think we all have to be 100% realistic in the fact that that doesn't translate through to the senior echelons of businesses or organisations. We have to be really realistic and honest with ourselves. There is a huge amount of work to be done, and work is being done and progress is being made. But the difference between the demographic of the people within Bristol at all levels, of all capabilities and of all skills, doesn't translate in the workplace equally on all levels and on all skills, particularly at those senior boardroom appointments. So, you know, as I say, there is good news out there, there is progress, but there is an awful lot more that we need to do, and we certainly should never be complacent about progressing that progress.
Yeah, definitely. Sam, what are your thoughts? Where do you think Bristol is currently in terms of diversity?
Well, I suppose from within my sector around disability, it's quite hard to say, but as long as there's still a disability employment gap, then there's still work to be done. With 20% of the UK population having a disability, you'd expect to see that sort of reflected roughly within the workforce, and that's not been the case for a long time. So there's definitely more we can do. I think there are a lot of great programs, initiatives, organisations and individuals within Bristol with a passion. Bristol is a very passionate city. We get a lot of good stuff done, but in a sort of a national landscape, I don't think we do it better than any other areas particularly. So there's still definitely a lot of work to be done. Yeah.
Clayton, what are your thoughts?
I kind of agree, actually. Obviously, it was Esther and kind of Sam. I think Bristol's great at talking about how great we are, but when you actually look at the figures, the facts and stuff, we still got a long way to go. I do feel like we're moving in the right direction because, from my experience, I sit on the board for the UW Business and Advisory Boards. So I know it's definitely moving in a direction, but however, I think we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah, Kalpna, coming from your background, your expertise, where do you think that we currently stand?
Well, look, we're in a city that's, you know, one of the first cities in the world to have a black mayor. We've got a black deputy mayor. We've got huge diversity. We're a city actually where there's a lot of history around talking about equality and actually pushing for it too. and so we've got the ecology here. We've got the environment here, and I think we've got a lot of people who are doing some really good things. But the reality is, sadly, that actually we still do have a long way to go. A lot of organisations are really thinking about things. Definitely since the Black Lives Matter movement, definitely in the last 2 years when we've seen the disproportionate impact of COVID on BME communities. So I think organisations are thinking. The question for me is, are organisations putting this at the heart, at the core of their strategic thinking and their strategic decision making? And because I think what hasn't happened is that a lot of organizations think about it, but they often think, well, actually, that's a separate thing. I'll get to that. So I've got my business, everyday business, and then I've got ED&I. And actually, that is never going to work. And that is never going to progress us. That is never going to change things. So that's what I think.
Yeah, okay, so key takeaway is we have a long way to go. And maybe before we get too critical, are you positive about the situation we're in? Again, I think I'd like to ask all of you this question. So whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, I suppose if I just carry on saying what I'm saying, we've got, as I said, we do have, the push here, and now we've got the environment that thinks about things, and I think we've also got I think millennials and groups, BME groups, who are asking those questions. So I think we've got the right sort of setup here, and I think what you've got is all businesses and organisations saying, a lot of them saying, well, we do want to do this. How do we do it? Where do we start? They see it as in a challenge, an enormous challenge. And what we often say to them, it is a challenge, but think of it as a huge opportunity. Yeah.
Esther, what do you think? Are you more positive?
I'm just going to follow on from Katna's comments because I agree entirely. I mean, we will always have some organisations, as we have some individuals, who are saying the right thing but not necessarily putting it into action. But I think that point about accountability is really key. We've seen an absolute step change, I think, in businesses and organisations holding themselves accountable for their progress on these things. And that may be self-imposed. It may be because of the people who work for them. We do see different generational attitudes to these issues and the importance of them and the attractiveness as an employer, if these things really are at the core of your business. So, there are a lot of drivers, and indeed from a professional services background, a lot of that driving force comes from client base and business as well. If your clients are demanding this of you, and we will see this in the legal profession, we have moved beyond saying the right things in pitches and tenders to actually doing the right things for the right reasons and being able to demonstrate accountability for that. I also just wanted to pick up, if I may, on Katna's point about the sort of integration with strategy, because I do think that is a really fundamentally important piece for the whole remit of diversity and inclusion. I'm not here to blow TLT's trumpet, but we have ED&I as a central pillar within our strategy that's just been relaunched. This isn't an add-on for us. It goes absolutely to the root of everything we do, whether that's service delivery to our clients, or indeed, equally as important, if not more important, actually the recruitment and retention and development of our own staff. So it really is an absolute core pillar of our strategy. And that's why, as a firm, we've invested senior resource into it, both in terms of my role as a partner and champion for EDI, and the senior sponsors we have for our various internal networks. But it is really, it is such a central point. And the other thing I think that is worth saying, there is such a huge benefit to doing this and getting it right and making progress. This isn't just about ticking a box and being seen to be good people. Anything you can do on diversity to improve the diversity of your workforce and your representation, whether that's through the gender disability, BAME, LGBT plus backgrounds, whatever it may be, because that brings a diversity of thought into your business. That brings a level of creativity and inclusion and just a completely different viewpoint from different people, which has to be positive for businesses. So there really is a tangible benefit to organisations to actually progressing their agendas on these things.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come more onto that later. Clayton, how are you feeling about where Bristol is, or the rest of the UK as well, currently in terms of diversity and leadership?
To be honest with you, for me, I think it's moving in the right direction, and I'm quite loving it. I'll be honest with you. And the reason why I'm loving it at the moment is because most people now are starting to be more open-minded. And for me, a lot of people want diversity, but they don't actually know what they want. But usually I just give them a solution. So the answer I'm looking for is you in or you're out. So it's much easier for them, but it's also easy for me. For example, the Street to Boardroom was the thing what got me on the board for the UW Business Advisory Board. Street to Boardroom was the way what got me forward working towards a university, developing the Street to Boardroom University course. So for me, I'll be honest with you, this is a great time for me. And I think as you're innovative and you have solutions and you just need a partnership, it's very easy for organizers to say, yes, I'm in, I'm not in. For many people, I see that they want diversity, but they actually know what diversity looks like, if that makes sense. So it's very hard for organizers to say, okay, we'll support you, but what do you actually want support with? And another thing I think it's very important as well, people think if you have someone from a different background, ethnicity, that you've got diversity. I don't think that is. I think we're missing class as well. Most people I know, especially come from an ethnic community, being me community, when they get in these positions on board level, they feel like they can't bring their culture or their background or their diversity. So technically nothing really changes. And I think the thing about what we try and do Street to Boardroom, it says what we says in the title, Street to Boardroom. So people know what they're getting directly without any BS, nonsense, straightforward talking. And I found out that most people now are interested in that now. They're interested in yes or no answers, how can we make change, and when it's going to happen. And to be honest with you, as I said, this is the great time for me. I'll be honest with you, I'm loving it at the moment. I'll be honest with you.
Okay, so very positive. I like it. Sam, lastly, on to you. How are you feeling, especially with your background?
I mean, how can I follow that? That was awesome. Yeah, definitely more positive. I think probably just echoing what everyone else has said. I do think that businesses and organizations have begun to see EDI in terms of the business case rather than just looking at it from a moral or political argument. And that means we're kind of talking the same language, we can get a bit more progress made. And it's great to see all these kind of new EDI roles around. And I guess all I'd say with that is that the role of that person in that EDI role should be to make themselves redundant as soon as possible, so that it just becomes kind of business as usual. But yeah, definitely positive in terms of kind of where things are going, definitely.
I mean, absolutely agree with that. I mean, it's our role to find out how do we advance that as quickly as possible, because we have to be honest about the fact that, pace is really important. We have to acknowledge that we're living in a world where people are very aware. There's the people are very sophisticated, so woke washing and so on, that's not going to work. But we, for Be On Board, it's about how to help organizations do this at a pace that works for them, but that really moves that pace along so that benefits the organization and benefits the city. And I think that is really, really important that we talk today, as it is National Inclusion Day. We talk about actually what we're doing and how do we get there as quickly as possible for everybody to benefit from this.
Yeah, so many reasons for diverse boardrooms, which we will go into more of the actual benefits.
Thanks.
Oh, Esther, were you speaking? Sorry.
To mention that one of the really positive things, I think, and it comes back to Clayton's point, is the collaboration in this area between organisations and different groups is one of the real positive things I think that we're seeing, and that really again is a change in approach we've seen over recent years. People are coming together to discuss, to share, to learn from each other, to share experiences, to look at opportunities to progress and develop together. And I think that sort of partnership and collaborative approach is absolutely fantastic. Organisations are looking for support, they're looking for help, they're recognizing they don't have the answers, and that collaboration, I think, is something that, you know, is a really great thing, and we should make more of it going forward.
Absolutely. Can I just say another thing, that we talk about board diversity as something separate, but board diversity, what it does, it brings an organisation that understands what the benefits of diversity are, not just to that organisation, so not just to its bottom line, not just to the individuals that are within it, but also to the city and the wider, if you like, geographical base that it sits in. And that is really, really critical for me. It's about talking about how do we make sure organisations get the maximum benefit from diversity. They get the maximum benefit in terms of their getting the best talent pool. But also how this contributes to the wider city is really critical, because what we want to see is, you know, what we've had is a legacy of organizations doing well, but a city where we have many disadvantaged groups, and a city where there is people, it trips off the tongue, a city of contrast. But we want to change that, and board diversity is the critical way to do that. And I find that really exciting, because I see this integral, I see this an integral thing. I see that as a sort of, a real sort of coming together, like Esther was saying, of actually organizations saying that we're here because we've got, a strategy in terms of what we are supposed to be doing, our strategy, but also we're also here understanding what our responsibility is to the city that we work in and the people in that city, and actually we can create something that is of mutual benefit, mutual advancement, and I really believe can be a real template for other cities. Bristol's got that to start with, so we've already got this fantastic base, and we've got people willing. And if we can get people sort of thinking, more in that way, I think we can go really far. But it is about those two things.
Yeah, and like we've all mentioned, Bristol is, we're really lucky. We have a really diverse city. But when it comes to leadership roles and boardrooms, it is still mainly middle-aged, middle-class white men. So why is this? And then what do we need to do in order to drive change? So this could be what your individual organizations are specifically doing, or what you would advise people watching this to do within their own workplaces. Clayton, what do you think?
I think to myself, I'll be honest with you, why would some people want change if they're still in power? Why would they want change? Let's be honest. I'm getting my pension, I'm on my good wages. Why would I want any change if I don't understand it? I'm just being honest. So you have to look from that point of view. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. It depends on the individual, but you have to put yourself in someone else's position. If I'm in the position for a long time, my wages is good, I've got my mortgage, I've got my kids, and everything's going well, why would I want to change? Is the company still doing well? So I always put myself in someone else's position when I have a conversation with them. That's how I go first. If I was on the side, what would I be thinking? So when it comes to private companies, all about profit making and stuff like that, limited companies generally, I talk to them about, obviously, if you have a diverse team, you can make some more profit working with companies like in Africa, in China, in India. So when they have that kind of conversation, alarm bells start to ring. And then we go into strategy, how we're going to deliver, how we're going to move forward. But you have to be honest to yourself. Not everybody wants to change.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I call my organization Street to Boardroom. I wanted authentic, I wanted honest. Before I started Street to Boardroom, I used to work for organizations. I used to go to meetings after meetings after meetings. And it used to be meetings after me and nothing progress. I'll be honest with you now, 95% of people contact me now is involved in what's being involved in Street to Boardroom. The 5% is they just want to see if I'm a nice person or not. So what I'm trying to say to you is you just be authentic and be yourself. You'll attract the right people. Because the bottom line is, nobody's going to tell you that they don't want change. Nobody's going to tell you that. You can talk to 100 people, 300 people, 500 people, and everybody's going to say you were looking at diversity and inclusion. And the fact is, not everybody wants that. So you need to be specific what you want, be honest and be authentic. And if they take it funny or take it personal, then obviously that's not people you need to be working with. And it's as simple as that. That's how I do it, because I think we need to get to that stage now in life that we have to be honest to ourselves. Yeah? And we have to be forward moving. As you said, we've got everything here in Bristol, everything. Everything's here. Diversity, great city, one of the best places. But the bottom line is most of it's talk. Yeah? The figures back that. It's not my personal opinion, it's the figures. So the reality is that some people in the city, or a lot of people in the city, do not want to change. It's as simple as that. Because I guarantee you, if your boss said to you that he's not giving you your wages at the end of the month, you'll find any way to try and get your wages. You'll speak to a solicitor, you're for citizen advice, you do anything because that's what you really want. And I don't think we're at that stage for a lot of organizations. So I just keep how it is. The bottom line is that you just need to find people who's authentic, who really want change. And there's people probably watching this who want change, and they'll be contacting us saying, you know what? I kind of like you guys talk, I haven't got all the answers, but to be honest with you guys, they're honest, they're authentic, and I'm going to get involved in it. And they'll probably send us email. And there's people going to be on there thinking to themselves, okay, well, we've heard it before. Where do you go from here? So the bottom line is be authentic, be yourself, be passionate, and you'll attract the right people as well.
I think the thing to remember, and we always say that and be on board, is that ED&I and equality, diversity, and inclusion, it's a long game, it's a long journey, and everybody talks about it like, oh, we'll just get biodiversity here, we'll do this, we'll do that, here's 3 things, we'll connect with the community. That's not going to cut it. No, it's not going to cut it, because actually, and not just because, those 3 things may not be the whole thing. I mean, you have to do institution-wide work, you just do. But also because we're all learning as we go along, so what we say on Be On Board is, look, you say that you want change. Okay, let's go on this journey together. Let's see it. Let's take it step by step. Let's give you learning. Let's us learn too. And I think that really helps organizations, because a lot of organizations are quite nervous. They think, oh, right, okay, what do I need to do? Does that mean I'm going to lose my job? Like Clayton says, am I going to lose my power? Am I going to say something wrong? Am I going to upset people? I don't understand this. So actually what you've got to say, actually, if you want to drive change, and you do, let's go on this journey together and do it. And that way, showing the mutual benefit, demonstrating that actually we have to sometimes learn a new language in this space. We have to learn how to, review our own biases and the way that we all think about things. We have to, educate ourselves. I think those things, and that can be quite nerve-wracking for quite a lot of people. But I think, certainly for us, Be On Board, we like to go in that way, because I think also in that way, you're going to get a much better result. You're going to get a longer term result and an understanding from the organisation and people who work within that. Actually, we're all in this together.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a question come in that I'm going to ask. And someone is asking, I'm interested in hearing practical actions you each recommend that Bristol businesses and public bodies should take to bring in and bring on diverse talent at boardroom levels. What would you say to that? Say some practical takeaways for the audience. Sam, would you like to, you could talk about your training.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was going to say that it's probably about that partnership working that we were talking about earlier. So finding the experts, seeking out kind of, best practice and people that can support you on that. Just to kind of link back to what we were talking about a minute ago, I think status quo is really comfortable for people, but sometimes people are just scared of getting things wrong, even if they're motivated to make change. And there's plenty of kind of organisations around Bristol, especially, that can guide businesses on things like best practice, how to identify and remove barriers for people. And yeah, I won't bang on about my program, but maybe I can talk about that later. But as an example, we're providing disability inclusion training for SMEs in the west of England, which is a really good way to kind of start that journey around making sure your workplace is inclusive for disabled people.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any things they want to share that your organisations might be doing, or just tips yourself?
If I can just follow on from Sam's comments, because I think for us at TLT, there's obviously, I mean, there is no right and wrong answer to these things, and it's such a myriad of different bits of the puzzle to try and make progress and make things better. We have invested an awful lot of time in our internal networks, in creating an environment internally at TLT where people genuinely feel able to bring their whole selves to work. So, being brave enough to start difficult conversations. We're just coming to an end of a series that has been organised and run by our internal BAME network called Reflections on Race. And it's been very much based on storytelling and sharing experiences, but also just challenging conversations, talking to people who don't have those lived experiences from people from the BAME community to share with their colleagues what life is like, what challenges they faced, what their experiences are. And really trying to both create that environment where we can have difficult conversations. We know it's okay to talk about these things. We empower people to talk about them. And therefore we can then learn and progress. And I think that kind of internal, groundwork to create that environment as an organisation is absolutely essential to then make differences. Because you need to be honest. We've all talked, the word honesty has been used an awful lot this afternoon already, but we do need to be honest with ourselves and our colleagues about where we are if we're ever going to make progress. Some of the sort of practical issues or practical tips, again, that there are no right and wrong answers on this, and to a certain extent I'd say just do something. Don't be afraid to get it wrong. Try something. If you're doing something with the best intentions and you're talking to the right people and collaborating with the right organisations, whether that's training, knowledge sharing, developing internal networks, whatever it may be, try it, have a go. If it doesn't work, you've tried, you look for something else. But there are a couple of things that I would just flag as sort of, key, I guess, practical points for the audience. Things like reverse mentoring are just so valuable for an organisation to, whether that's with people from different ethnic backgrounds, different sexualities, whatever it may be, to actually start sharing that information and challenging the thinking. It's a great opportunity for those people outside of those communities to learn. It's also a great opportunity for those people within those communities to start getting their voices heard and to raise their profile. And it's just such a powerful and valuable program to put in, and makes a real difference. Looking at your recruitment routes, where do you recruit from? How do you recruit? What are your recruitment criteria? Is there a better way of doing it? Are we missing groups of society by the way we recruit? Are we disadvantaging particular groups? Are we not attracting particular groups because of where we recruit? And also your internal processes, what are we asking people to deliver in order to be promoted within the business or to be recognised? And does that disadvantage people? And how can we then level that or address that? And is that, just challenging yourselves on what you're doing? And just because you've always done something shouldn't be the way you carry on doing things. I think the last point I'd make is just really on a practical level is the importance of data. And I know that sounds really dry and very lawyerly, so I apologise for that. But actually, we really do need to hold ourselves accountable. Part of that is actually measuring progress, measuring the difference. Are these initiatives and these activities making a difference for us? And that's a challenge for a lot of businesses. One, because they haven't got the qualitative data to start with to then measure from, and collecting data, can be difficult, particularly on things like hidden disabilities or sexuality, depending on what organisation you're in. But you do need, I think, to align your activity with some measure of mechanism of measure, even if that is less quantitative and more qualitative, maybe from employee surveys and feedback. But unless we do hold ourselves to account for that, we can't say, well, this is right, it's working. Well, actually, it's not working, it's not making a difference. Let's try something else to solve the problem. So those would be some of my thoughts.
Yeah.
Can I say something, Sophia? Just going back to why we're here, we're talking about Bristol's boardrooms. So, and I think it's really, really critical that we bear that in mind, because organisations do a lot of things, but they don't impact in the areas where the leadership and the boardrooms, there's no change in those. And I think that we've got, why is it so important that boardrooms are diverse? Because that is where decisions are made that impact whole cities, whole communities, the whole of every single person in an organisation. So you're talking about, if you're talking about internally, you're talking about the promotion chances of people within your organization, the happiness, if you want to give yourself a happiness factor, the cultural sort of like opportunities within your organization. Then if you're looking outside, you're talking about actually, you know, your impact on the city, and that impact can have a really positive or a really negative effect. And of course, you know, what I was saying earlier was actually we haven't seen altogether that positive effect, because we have many organizations here in our city, but we still have a city that has, you know, areas in the city which are so highly deprived that they're still cited in the whole of the UK as the most deprived areas. So something is very wrong. So for me, I'm getting that boardroom diverse is really, really important. Getting that boardroom to understand its impact that it makes in terms of decision making is critical. And then understanding for them that why do they need that diversity? So all the things that we do in an organization, they're important, but if the people at the top do not represent the city that they live in, or do not have a perspective and understanding of the impact of their decisions in both the organization, the people within it, and the city, then then we're not going to achieve what we want to achieve. Everything we do must have an outcome. And I think this is another thing that we support organizations saying, think about what you do. What's your outcome here? What's a real tangible outcome? There's some soft outcomes too. What I also would like to talk about is, what are the barriers? What are the blockers that we find? What are the reasons that we're not getting diversity of boards? I think we have to understand those blockers and barriers, because without understanding them, without overcoming them, we will not achieve what we want to achieve. So it's really important that we focus on, for me, I focus on boardrooms because I really believe that can make a critical difference to our city and to the wealth of our city. If you don't care about communities, think about the wealth of our city, because in the end, wealth will benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I'm arguing for the case of diversity in leaderships, boardrooms, workforce, my main argument is that it's fair. It's fair that the people in power equally represent the people who live in our city. But there is also, of course, loads of tangible benefits for companies who do have this level of diversity. We've covered some of these, but could you go into some more detail, anyone, of what are the actual key benefits that companies face should they have a more diverse boardroom or workforce?
We know there's something. Go on, Clayton.
I think creativity, marketing strategies, profit. For a lot of the limited companies, profit, as I mentioned earlier, if you've got people from across the world, diversity and senior management, then obviously your business can expand across the world. So I think as well, and I think generally if you look at TV, look at stuff, marketing is a great now issue. Diversity more on TV with Black Lives Matter than ever before. So I think a lot of it is just coming out with creative ideas. I think from my experience, for me, I came from St. Paul's in Easton. I went to mostly a white Caucasian school. I went Fulton, I went Coastal Primary School, and I was head boy sports captain. So, and in my year, Fulton High School, I think there was about 10 ethnic people of color, but I was head boy and I was sports captain by votes. So it wasn't just literally, but I think what made me great about it, I was just being myself and said, you know what, vote for me. My name is Clayton. I want to be head boy sports captain. And they didn't look at my race or my color. They just seen that I was a nice guy and like my personality. So I think a lot of time it's not just about race and culture. It's about authentic, being yourself and being different as well. And I think that could do, like you saying, was when you're looking at business as well, really. Creativity, profit, marketing, and just different kind of mindset, all kind of what we talked about a bit earlier, basically.
I'd agree entirely with those comments, Clayton. You know, the creativity and the diversity of thought we've mentioned already, but I also think, you know, one of the really valuable benefits is actually that role modeling piece. You know, we could talk for hours about the benefits to a business in terms of productivity and creative thinking and diversity of thought and how that can improve the business. But actually, one of the really important things, just as important of all of those factors, is actually having people in those senior positions as role models for others, because that is a really powerful thing. It's a really powerful thing for the people working alongside them in those senior roles, but it's a really powerful thing for people looking at businesses, thinking, where do I want to work? Who do I want to work with? And where can I see my career? Because if you're from a background whereby, you know, whether it's you know, a deprived social background or from a different ethnicity, if you don't see people in roles that you could fulfill, that's already a disadvantage for you. You don't see yourself in those, you've got nothing to work towards, you don't have that ambition, and you may, you know, by default, society may force you into another career path. I think that role modeling is so valuable and so important, and for me personally, just as important as the productivity in the business. But I also, you know, think it's worth saying that actually holding individuals out as role models is in itself quite problematic for those individuals, because you're putting a lot of weight of responsibility on particular individuals to you know, because as a role model you are very exposed, you're very vulnerable, you're putting yourself out there for people to you know, question what you're doing, why you're doing it, and holding yourself out as some kind of example. So we have to kind of normalize that role model piece. You know, this shouldn't be, oh look, well there's a black female on that board and therefore, you know, that's something you could be. But it is so important to have the visibility of everybody in society, in the whole city of Bristol, in positions that everybody else can then aspire to fill through their lives and career. So I do think that role modeling is really vital, but we do need to then support the role models.
Definitely. I want to say something as well, quickly as well. Like, I don't know if anybody knows about the hip hop game. Maybe I'm a bit older, maybe I'm too young, I don't know. But what happened in the industry of hip hop, you had two white artists. One was Eminem and one was Vanilla Ice. Don't know if anybody remembers those rappers as you're part of that culture. But one made it and one didn't. What was the reason behind that? The reason behind that was because Vanilla Ice was from the suburbs and he was trying to talk about hip hop culture and just kind of try to fit in. Eminem was from a disadvantaged background, being honest, and said, I like hip hop music, I like hip hop music, I like authenticity, and I just like what you're doing. Now, Eminem is one of the biggest rappers in the dominant hip hop black culture. One of the biggest, sell most of the records. So what I'm trying to tell people, it's not all about color. It's just about being authentic and honest. Once you're authentic and honest, you will realize people would soon want to work with you and adapt to you and automatically feel like, you know what, I made a mistake, or I didn't make a mistake, or I did. But however, because the way that person come across, I want to work with that person. So what I'm trying to say is that we just need to have open conversations. Because as I said, Vanilla Ice, Eminem, both white rappers, one made it and one didn't. And Eminem sold a lot of albums compared to a lot of the black artists out there. So that shows you alone that really it's about being authentic, honest, and true to yourself. And I'll be honest with you, I get so many people come up to me when I go to meetings like this and discuss stuff as well. And after the meetings, they feel, you know what, Clayton? I actually feel the same way you do. But they feel like they can't bring that to the table. They don't feel like they can suggest what they really feel. And that's quite sad in itself. So you've got people on the board level, what might not in the diverse, but also feel like they can't be themselves as well.
I think that's really important that we allow people to be. Yeah, people have to say in themselves, don't they?
Yeah.
What they feel.
And then a lot of times after the meeting, as I said, they come up to me after the meeting, I felt the same way, but you kind of spoke for me as well. So it's quite surprising that you have people in power on the board level, but also don't feel like they could be themselves as well. And that was quite surprising to me, because I'm thinking you're on the big level, you're on the board level, you're around your directors, your executives, but you feel the same way I do. So I know things are changing. It might not be changed to the public, but behind closed doors, people are starting to feel like this.
I think this is what I was saying about, taking people along with you. You've got to be honest. You've got to let people be honest about what their fears are around diversity, and being able to say, look, I don't know what this means for me. What does it mean? How do I get it right? The thing about role models, I mean, is absolutely critical, Esther. We're talking about, we have to have role models. We have to have people in positions of power, that young people from every single background, every single protected characteristic can aspire to. I mean, that is really important, and that's why we, on Beyond Board, we have an incubator pipeline, because we want to encourage people to think about being on those boards, and then when they get on the boards, we say to them, look, you are the ones that can actually, you'll become the role models for the future. We make sure we don't give them all the taxing of that to have to be able to be the only ones. But we're doing a project, because we're talking about organizations. We're doing a project called Aspire, because it's really, really important that non-profit organizations too think about diversity on their boards. And that is really that is working with organizations on the one hand, saying you work in the community and your board doesn't have those perspectives, and then bringing them together with people from the community who have really great skills. People think that people in the community don't have those skills. They have great skills. They're lawyers, they're educationalists, they're teachers, they are, scientists. They understand the community. Bringing them together and actually helping them, work together, and then creating more diverse boards, and that's a way of overcoming the blockers and overcoming any sort of challenges. But that sort of role modeling is really important. That role modeling has to be quite quick, because we've got young people coming through all the time. And what is great about when we have this talent pool, which I can't tell you, we've got the most wonderful people, in our city. You're opening the opportunities to them. First of all, you're talking about accelerated leadership for people who already have great skills, who are already doing great jobs in their own organizations. But you're also putting these great leaders in positions that are going to support a team in making, fantastic decisions for both the organization and the city. So I think that is a really important issue, and it is something that millennials are really, really, clear about. What does your board look like? You can't have an ED&I policy anymore. It's just not enough. People can see much more beyond that. They say 1 in 4 people, don't believe what brands say. They want to see brands and organizations, actually delivering on what their policy says. So you have to, that authenticity is really important. But that authenticity has to come with action. It has to come with not just, ads with on television with, black and brown faces or disabled people. It has to come with, well, actually, what does your organization look like within the organization? How does it behave? And who is in that organization?
I'm going to ask a question that's come in, and Kalpner, I'll ask you first, as you have to leave in a couple minutes. But it is, someone has said, I'm recruiting charity trustees for a youth mental health charity. We've had very few applications from any non-white middle-aged men, even though we've targeted a wide range of communities representative of the people we serve. How would you suggest that we find trustees? Is it because it's unpaid that we're struggling?
Come to be on board. I mean, I'm not just saying that, but we have a fantastic track record. We work with 75 organisations, and they are truly, becoming diverse as organisations. Look, it's not easy. It's not easy. First of all, you need to have those networks. That's what we have. Secondly, you have to speak authentically to those networks. You have to understand how you're recruiting, who you're recruiting, where you're recruiting, what's the language that you're using. How can we make those connections? So when we're doing recruitment for people, we rewrite the ad, because sometimes we use a language that actually only certain people understand. It's because all organizations seem to have their own sort of like jargon, don't they? And they get it, but you put that outside and you think, well, what does this mean? Most organizations. So we support organizations in thinking about what they're saying, because when you unpick what you want, it can be quite simple. So there are many, many things that you can do, many connections that you can make, many ways of coming forward. And really, the other thing that organizations don't do very well is that they don't actually talk about the great things they do. We don't know all organizations. I mean, the first organization we worked for was Bristol Zoo. And Bristol Zoo, I mean, I was talking to the chair at the time and I said, yeah, my little boy used to go to the zoo. It's very nice. And she said, well, do you know it is it's the biggest attraction in the Southwest? And I said, no. And she said, yes, 144,000, I can't remember what it was, or 440,000 people come, regularly. And I said, well, do you put that in your ads? Do you tell people what you do? And she said, no, well, actually, we don't do that. And I said, well, look, if I was looking for a trustee position, or if I was thinking where I'd want to work, do you talk to them about the conservation or the other things? Oh, no, we don't do that, Well, I'd want to know what it's about. So there are a number of things that you can do, but you have to do it with authenticity. And, you have to make this, because sometimes it takes a bit longer because you have to work harder. But I can tell you there are a lot of people who would be interested in working as trustees. At the same time, for us, we know that we have to encourage people to become trustees, because it's not always in our sphere. It's not something that I would say that, I mean, I had never thought about sitting on a board, even though I came from a large organization. I just thought that was what white middle-class men did. And it was only when I was asked to sit on a board through the BBC, when I was at the BBC, I thought, oh, actually, hang on a minute, this is for everybody. So you have to open up that as well to people. So that's why the On Board has those two elements. It has that incubating element too. So there are many things you can do. Long answer to a question. I hope that's really helpful to the person who asked that.
Thank you, Kalpana. And if you need to leave, then
I'll be leaving in a couple of minutes. Then.
Okay. Well, does anyone have any advice that they'd like to give for the person who asked this question, right? Who's been trying to find a more diverse trustee for their charity, but is struggling?
From a kind of disability angle, I think just echoing what Kalpana said around who you're advertising and who you're engaging with, I find within this sector, kind of the direct engagement with individuals and groups is a really good way of doing things. And especially around the language that's used and whether the application process itself is kind of inclusive and accessible. If all those kind of things are in place, and again, it's kind of what Clayton said, is sometimes it takes a bit of time to get the word spread, and having that mindset change of what are the benefits of being a trustee? Why would someone even sort of volunteer to do that in the first place, and how you articulate that? But it's not an easy challenge. So good luck to whoever asked that.
I've got another point.
Oh, yeah.
I think generally also for the person who asked that question is when you do appoint somebody from a different background, make sure they feel comfortable as well. Because a lot of times that you advertise and you might get a person from a different background, ethnicity or LGBTQ community or whatever, but when they actually get the position, the job, they don't feel like they could be themselves. So I think it's important as well that if you do select someone from a different type of background or class or anything like that, that you make sure they could be themselves when they get there. Otherwise, they'll probably just end up leaving very quickly. And to be honest with you, you're looking for a trustee. When I look for people with so much different skills. I want people who don't have a clue about the business I do at all. Have no clue. Don't want to know what street to boardroom mean, because I know they're going to bring something different to the table. So I think a lot of time people think that you need to employ professionals, doctors and lawyers, but be honest with you, from my experience, I'm trying to develop a university degree course with Swansea. I haven't even got a degree. So to me, if someone's going to judge me from because I haven't got a degree, I can't get this job or the position, then I don't think society should be like that. Because to me, as I said, how many people do you know? How many people do I know who's actually saying that I'm creating a degree? You're actually building your own. We know many people who's got degrees. But if I went for the normal way, everybody else and judged me in that way of saying why he hasn't got a degree, he hasn't got this. From my experience of street to boardroom, I haven't got any big qualifications in business. I got none at all, if I'm honest to you. So for me, it's about seeing that person and saying, you know what, we're not used to this, but this person brings different ideas. This person brings something different to the table. That's what I want to see more of diversity, to be honest with you. I think we see a lot of professionals, the same also, but I'm looking for people who look at the world differently. And I think the young people are starting to do that. Young people ain't looking at race or gender anymore. Those days are gone, the young people, millennials. They don't care if their friend's Chinese. That's my best friend in school. I'm supporting them regardless. It's a different time now, and the organizations need to realize that because we're living in a different time.
I think it's really important to say that. I think Clayton's absolutely right. It's not just about, finding people and where you find them, but think about what you need as well. Because we often sort of default to, I need an accountant, I need a solicitor, I need this. And actually sometimes you do need those things, but also think about what else do you need? But if you are looking for an accountant or a solicitor, think about what other skills those people might bring from a different background, because those things are the things that are going to really make it, make your board sing. And so I have to go now, but thank you very much. But if you want to know about Be On Board, I'm sure Sophia will tell you. And I just want to tell you lastly that we're going to be awarded for our services to diversity and inclusion. And I'm just really, really proud of that. And so I have to say thank you to everybody who's worked with us. We have a long way to go, but we live in a fantastic city, and I think this is a city that can actually do it, and I think do it before any other city. So thanks ever so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Kalpna. All right, okay. I also wanted to pick up on a point that we were talking about with Clayton, how a big part of what Street to Boardroom does is change what's associated with board members or leadership roles. So like saying that diversity goes past race, sexuality, gender, and expands into who someone is, like what they wear, how they speak. But I was thinking about how this may be expanded into a more corporate sector. So like Esther, for example, could you imagine a near future where board members won't have to fit into that very formal stereotype?
I can imagine it, and we're very much heading in that direction already, I think. I talked earlier about the work we've done at TLT with our internal networks and creating the genuinely diverse and inclusive culture across the whole business. We already see people very comfortable being themselves at TLT, and that's not necessarily because they're from a particular protected characteristic background, but lawyers traditionally are very straight-laced, particularly, you'd recognize a lawyer's office if you walked into it because everyone's there in, suits and shirts and ties, and there's a certain, way that people appear. That really has changed. When I think about when I started as a trainee solicitor back in the heady days of 1998, when I started my training contract, and what people looked like in the office and how people behaved, it's worlds away from the environment we now have at TLT, and I know lots of other businesses have. And actually, trying to find the positives in the world, the pandemic has been horrendous for all sorts of different reasons, for all sorts of different people. But in some respects, it's been quite a leveler for a lot of businesses where people have been working remotely from home. Dress codes are very much more relaxed, and that's translating as people come back into the office. We've all seen each other's backgrounds, cats, children, whatever. It's all been very leveling, and it's very much helped, I think, progress that removal of hierarchy. TLT, I have to say, as an organisation, and I've been with the firm 8 years or so, has always been a very flat structure. It's always been very open. There hasn't been that sort of them and us of the senior people and the junior people, which I still remember from my days as a trainee, which really isn't that long ago. I'm doing myself a justice there by trying to suggest I'm not quite as old as I am, but it's within the last 20 years or so. It's such a different world out there, And the businesses who want to grow and recognise they need to grow and retain and, you know, attract talent from every area of society will do what they can to make their business inclusive, to make people feel comfortable. So, you know, that may translate into very relaxed dress codes. It may translate into very agile working arrangements, you know, use of tech so that people can work remotely, whatever it is. I think, you know, that is all helping on a corporate level shift away from the sort of, if you like, the very old-fashioned version of what working in a law firm might look and feel like for people, which, as I say, probably, you know, from a social mobility perspective, would have put a lot of people off because they've never been part of that, never experienced it, haven't had the role models in that environment. So, you know, the more we can do as organisations to give individuals that experience, you know, whether that's through vacation scheme working opportunities that we do at TLT, whether it's just through, you know, people in our business coming from different areas and having different networks and connections. We're doing an awful lot of work on social mobility at the moment to make sure that we're recruiting in the right places, using the right tools to, you know, both recruit graduate talent and also deal with CVs and applications in, and how we're processing those, what we're measuring, what we're recognizing as value, to try and remove some of those inherent barriers so that, you know, more people across society know what being a lawyer at TLT is like, and hopefully will recognize that as somewhere that they want to work, or a business they want to you know, integrate with or deal with. So yeah, lots of things in the corporate world, but I think, you know, that kind of leveling and removal of hierarchy and, you know, kind of being a little bit more modern is really going a long way to try and deal with some of those inclusivity issues.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. I also wanted to talk a little bit about barriers that are maybe, you know, stopping people getting into these roles. In the most recent census data, it found that people from ethnic minorities in Bristol experience greater disadvantage than the national average in education and employment, with Black African people being the most disadvantaged. What do we think are the obstacles at play here when it comes to race, stopping people entering those leadership positions and being so disadvantaged when it comes to education and employment?
Wow, I mean, where to start? You know, there are a myriad, and I'm not holding myself out as an expert to give chapter and verse on what those barriers are, because there are a whole range of things, and we've talked about a lot of them this afternoon in various points. You know, the role modelling, the opportunities. Coming back to the question that somebody raised about the trustee appointments, you know, if we're looking for people in those roles, whether it's trustees or, you know, employee recruits who have experience, we're immediately limiting the scope of opportunity to a certain demographic. Because if there is a, you know, reduced number of Black individuals who want to be trustees, chances are they haven't had experience of being trustees. So to demand the experience or require the experience as part of your process of recruitment is going to remove other people. And, you know, as Clayton says, we may then lose those opportunities to work with people who really act as a critical friend, which is what the trustee role is for, because they come with a different level of challenge and interest. So, you know, that would just be one thing. Access to education, obviously, because all jobs start at the beginning, wherever you progress your career. We need to make sure that people are being in the right schools, are being supported through those school environments, are given the right access to, you know, computer equipment, IT equipment, whatever they need to progress that they may not have because of their social background, and then progressing that into work opportunities. So that's, you know, there is a whole myriad of things that are causing the problems. It's very difficult to pinpoint it in any detail, but, you know, I'm sure Sam and Clayton will have some comments, but it is such a broad range of issues. So, you know, internally, it's a whole broad range of approaches to try and tackle some of them.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to say, but as well as race, obviously, it's, you know, we need to consider other areas of diversity. For example, you know, disabilities, just naming one. So a fact that I read, Sam, you can confirm if this is correct, but over 75% of disabled people who are aged 16 and over are economically inactive, which is very high. So Sam, you're working on a programme tackling Bristol's disability employment gap. What are some of the blind spots that employers might be facing when working with people with disabilities, and also might make it more difficult for these employees to get into higher, like stronger leadership roles or in boardrooms?
I think it comes down to the kind of the fundamental understanding of how people view disability. So at Leonard Cheshire and most other disability charities, we follow something called the social model of disability, which basically describes three main kind of barriers that are present in society, whether they're environmental, organisational, or attitudinal. And in the workplace, you encounter all of those simultaneously. In terms of the main barriers would be attitudinal around what disability actually means to someone, and therefore what people consider disabled people can, can't, should or shouldn't do. And work has always been something that I think in the last century that hasn't been kind of afforded to disabled people as such. It's not sort of seen as a commonplace thing. And also, I don't think it's necessarily intentional sometimes that organisations don't have a representation of disabled people, but they're not aware of the barriers that are present in their organisation. So whether it's recruitment policies or those kind of unrealistic job descriptions or just jargon, frankly, sometimes, so kind of cutting through all of that and having some time to kind of analyse where the barriers are so you can then remove them.
Yeah.
One quick thing to say on that as well is it's kind of a bit of advice around that is, in recruitment, we often talk about disclosure, like disclose your disability, where we would definitely say to use words like share or just make it a bit less formal, because it does make it sound like sort of a dirty secret, something you should be a bit afraid of or ashamed of, where in reality, most workplace adjustments cost basically nothing, but maybe 10, 20 pounds. And in terms of that employment gap in our programme, I think it's around 50% of disabled people are employed, and around 80% of non-disabled people are. So it's a discrepancy of 30%, which I would say are largely down to those barriers in the workplace. And there's two ways of kind of looking at the support. So one, over the years, working with individuals to try and support people into roles directly. But the downside of that is they may get a job, but the organisation actually isn't aware of reasonable adjustments, isn't a very inclusive place. You're kind of setting people up to fail. Whereas working directly with organisations, making sure they're inclusive, have a good understanding of social model of disability, how to identify and remove barriers, you're hopefully setting up people for success a bit better.
Absolutely, thank you. And my next question is maybe going to give us a bit of an opportunity to be a bit more critical about where Bristol is at. We're obviously doing a lot of great things, but Clayton, you said that Bristol is really good at talking about diversity, but not so good when it comes to delivering. What makes us poor when it comes to actually taking action?
99% of people don't want to come out their comfort zone. You could have all the training, sit down diversity training, 3 days, 4 days, 2 days, 2 weeks. But the bottom line is that doesn't affect people, then more people come out their diversity. And the funny thing about it, it's not just young people, it's most people generally don't want to come out their comfort zone, if I'm honest to you. From my experience, the reason why I've been able to gain a lot of knowledge, because I come up my comfort zone, I had to. Even I stayed in the community that I was in, although I grow. And if I stayed in the community that I was in and just stayed there, would people really care? Okay, they might care for 5 minutes, 2 weeks, stuff like that. But the bottom line is they're going to forget about me. So I made the choice to just come out the community and learn about society. It was as simple as that. And now I make it simple. I may make it sound simple, it wasn't that simple. So I think most people need to come out and come out their comfort zone. And the reason what we're trying to do next year, we're doing a course called Get Out Your Comfort Zone. And this is a diversity course, but it's a bit different than the rest of them. What we're looking to do is actually put people in the community. So what we do is somebody's come from a community and they haven't got a relationship with the Muslim community. They spend a day and I give them 5 questions for that whole day. And it's just them on their own. And they've got to answer all these questions all day, and then they've got to report back to me the next day. Because what I'm trying to say to you is different for people than actually doing a course than going to reality. Yeah? That is different. And many of times, organizations, we keep doing this, courses, and thinking people's going to change until it affects you really to the heart and you feel it. That's when you have true change. And that's why when developers are saying, come out of our comfort zone next year, of course, what we're looking to develop, where you literally come out your comfort zone into the community, but you're there on your own. So as you're going to the mosque, you'll be there on your own. You'll have my mobile phone, I'll have my mobile phone, and you'll be asking a few questions that day. And the questions will be tough, but I guarantee you, you will get more out of that with that experience than actually doing a diversity course for 2 or 3 days. 100%. The reason why is because you're actually living the truth reality. You're coming out of your comfort zone. You're seeing the community. You're seeing what they eat. You're seeing what they dress. You're seeing what the street looks like. Diversity course can't teach you that. You know, all you're doing is looking at presentations. And after when you've had your lunch or something, a lot of times, I don't know about you guys, I feel tired and I want to go to sleep after when I've had my lunch. So by that time, I'm like, I'm holding on, but I can't take everything after lunch. So for me, it's all about doing things different and being innovative and really being true to yourself. Because most people know, deep down, most people know what's going on, but they just don't listen to their inner voice. Yeah? But deep down, you know, you think, you know, did I really do that right? Did I do this right? And I've got friends of mine, white friends of mine who work in recruitment companies, and they tell me many times that they could have a African Caribbean person who's got more qualifications, but when they put them forward for the job, they don't get a job. But they tell me, and as you can see here, I'm a black man. The reason why, because I'm open-minded. Yeah? I'm not going to be a critic towards it. I'm going to want to work with them so they feel comfortable to talk to me. As you can see me now, I'm talking things quite simple. I'm being honest, I'm being authentic, but I'm smiling, I'm smirking with it, I'm laughing as well. So even though I'm telling you truth, it doesn't affect me so much because there's a smile towards it and humor. So it makes a lot of difference. And this is what people need to come across. You could speak truth, but it's the way you deliver it. If you tell a child no, and you go, no! You spell it exactly the same, but while you come across, you're gonna get a different reaction. The way you speak to your mum is not the same way you talk to your sister, and that's family. So my advice is you need to do things simple as that. Think about, do I speak to my wife the same way I talk to my sister? No. Do I speak to my granddad the same way I talk to my brother? Probably no. If I tell a child no, and I go no, you're gonna get a different reaction. So think about those simple things when you do marketing, you do things differently. Think about that. Who's your audience? How are you gonna come across? And I think the great thing about me with Street to Board, I'll be honest with you, Street to Board has made me a free man. Because now I can go to meetings wearing my suit, or I can dress street with my tracksuit, and I'm still acceptable. I love that. To me, that's freedom. Brilliant. Yeah? If I go to me, I can dress my tracksuit. If I go to me, I can wear a suit, and I'm still not out of place. So to me, it's all about freedom and happiness.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, wearing my tracksuit all day, every day sounds pretty good. So one for the audience is, what would you say, or how would you say that our audience can engage with the conversation to make Bristol a leader in diversity? So for example, who can they call out? How should they work with their employers? What steps do they have to take to make progress? And I think, yeah, I'll ask everyone this one. So whoever wants to go first.
Can I chip in first on this one before handing over to Sam and Clayton? Because, and this sort of slightly follows on from Clayton's comments just now. I think there is still a huge amount of work to be done by allies in the D&I space. For years, and still in pockets, we kind of put the emphasis of solving the problems or coming up with the solutions on people from those protected groups that are underrepresented or disadvantaged. You know, every member of society has responsibility to make this better. And, you know, the one thing that the Black Lives Matter campaign has taught us and reinforced is that it's not enough to not be racist. You've got to be anti-racist. And it's about everybody accepting responsibility for delivering on this agenda. And that means, you know, empowering people to act as allies. There's an education piece there. There is a confidence piece. There is a permission piece. But we really need to empower every member of society to act on the D&I agenda and not just, you know, nod and smile and say, yes, it's the right thing to do. But actually, you know, that's a Black community issue. And therefore, I'm not a member of the Black community, so it's not my problem to sort out. You know, life isn't like that. The world isn't like that. This is society's problem. We're all members of society. So I think, you know, the one thing I would say to all of our audience members today is, you know, whatever your background, how can you be a better ally? How can you support people across the whole of society? And that's not just calling out, you know, bad behaviour or discrimination where you see it, but it's about actually, what can you do to help promote people? Where can you make a difference in your communities or your societies or your businesses to help level that playing field for people who may have disadvantages? So that would be my kind of call to arms, I think, to the audience. I'm sure Sam and Clayton have got some comments as well.
Yeah, probably much the same as you've been saying, Esther. I mean, I think getting it on the agenda definitely is really important. So kind of making a commitment to having a change, because I think we've talked about this quite a lot. There's just the status quo, things take time to change, but sometimes you need that catalyst just to get things going. I think definitely doing some kind of reading, understanding the issues, and also talking to people, but not being afraid to seek advice and ask those difficult questions. There's loads of organisations around Bristol that are just dying to speak to each other to make effective change in our city. So it's just about having that first step of getting it on your agenda, making a commitment, then making those connections and actually doing something about it. So yeah, not overly complicated.
I always say this: imagine this is young people and adults who find themselves caught up in a range of legal activity could believe they can achieve greatness by giving them knowledge and confidence to apply what they've learned from the streets to the legal hustle. It's not where you're coming, it's where you're going, what's important. So when you look at the street business and you look at the corporate business, there's no difference. On the street side, you've got your product, the weed. On the corporate side, you've got your product, computers. On the street side, you've got your crew. On the corporate side, you've got your team. On the street side, you've got your boss man. On the corporate side, you've got your manager. On the street side, you make money, lose money. On the corporate side, it's profit and loss. On the street side, you go to prison or death. And on the corporate side, you turn bankrupt and lose your job. So the person on the street takes more of a risk than the person in the corporate industry. Because most people in the corporate industry, when I worked in there, is that they have a basic salary and then they can make commission on the side. On the street side, either you make money or you don't make money. But it's the same kind of strategy to get involved. So for me, I've realized that really everybody's got skills and everybody's got adaptable skills. But the society what we live in brainwashes people to feel that if you haven't got a professional title, you're nobody. That's a lie. That is 100% lie. Because as I said to you, I guarantee, and I've bet so many people so many times, and no one's never took me up an offer. I said, I guarantee the person from the street would do better in the corporate industry than the person from the corporate industry would do better in the street. 100%. And I bet everybody so many times, and I bet anybody right now to put that bet in, that will happen. And no one's never betted me before. So that tells you that we know people got skills out there. And I've been telling many people over years, and no one's never betted me before. Because it's the truth. So for me, everybody got skills. So people need to start looking at people as an individual and start getting fooled by the nonsense what's out there. It's a fact. Because I've just given you an easy analogy between the different worlds. And as you can see, it's exactly the same effort. That the other person obviously is done professional, gone the right way, and the person's gone the wrong way. However, some people say that people who's in a limited business, in the corporate business, could be crooks themselves. We've heard that many times on TV, as you know already, and politicians. So really, are those people just honest, or the professionals just lying to us? Who knows? I'll let you guys decide that.
Well, on that bombshell, I think it's maybe time to wrap up. We've run out of time, but I would like to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists who joined us today. It really was very insightful, and I hope everyone enjoyed the conversation. Thank you to everyone watching and everyone who worked on this event today. If you enjoyed it, please make to keep an eye out for future Bristol24 Presents events. We're going to finish with a short film from our Better Business members. We'd like to take the opportunity to thank our public and business members for supporting independent journalism in Bristol, and TLT for supporting Bristol 24/7 to host this event. We could not do this without your support. To learn more about Better Business and how your organisation can join, simply fill out our details on the web form, which can be found underneath the video player, and one of the team will be in touch. Alternatively, you can head over to www.bristol247.com/betterbusiness. Thank you again, and see you next time.
Bristol24 for me are a really powerful organisation that are connected throughout the city, and they provide a voice for people in the city.
And in a relatively short amount of time have become a very trusted outlet. They provide a very vibrant kind of reporting across the city, and people really value that.
We love that Bristol24 see their role as greater than just that of a media outlet, and they very much try and play an active role in helping to drive a better Bristol, and that's why we're part of this. Bristol is a really vibrant city, but it's also really full of inequalities, and so we joined the initiative because it's one way of helping to work with other organisations to change that.
We also know that no one business or organisation can change the world on their own, so collaborative initiatives like this one are essential for driving forward positive change.
The Better Business Initiative helps us to make connections within our communities, work with organisations that share our values, and connect with the type of people that we want to work with within our communities.
And this provides a platform for those organisations to come together and collaborate and hopefully have a bigger impact because they're working together to achieve these things.
Gives us as SW an opportunity to give back, working alongside like-minded businesses.
I really love what Bristol24 does for the city, and the Better Business part of that has been brilliant for us. It's a chance to meet with other businesses. Being part of Better Business is a win-win situation. It's great in that we can contribute to the city, but it's also great for our business.
Wildfire has definitely benefited from being part of the initiative in terms of the networking. We can learn from other companies, and we do get involved.
It's a very sort of for the people organisation, and again that fits the whole culture of my firm and what I was trying to create and who I was trying to help, so it seemed like the perfect fit.
They champion new projects, collective action, and bring together all those different stakeholders, businesses, charities and civil organisations too.
I think the Better Business Initiative is a great way of bringing together organisations and individuals that share a goal of making Bristol a great place to live, work and study.
It's a really fantastic community of local businesses who come together to support the local city.
So we think it's a great opportunity to learn about different practices, how we can improve and continuously develop our strategy and keep on progressing.
We really love that what they give to the community, and we really wanted to be a part of it because it's fantastic.